Humanitarian response advisor there to discuss what this means for the people of Gaza and for aid agencies working there. Very good morning to you, Chris, and thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Good morning, Peter. Thank you for having me.
All right. Can you briefly outline what exactly Israel's plan is when they say take military control of Gaza City? What would that entail, and what would it mean if it's carried out?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that we've been having internal discussions on quite a bit, as you can imagine, over the past few days. The Israeli cabinet has made this decision and then outlined a several-stage plan that begins mid this month and then stretches all the way to a final completion phase of this full control that allegedly at the beginning of the year. And in the interim, there would be a heavy ground offensive preceded by heavy bombardment and essentially encouraging people to displace once again. So the exact specifics have yet to be seen. The Israelis have repeatedly made predictions like this, set out timelines that they haven't met themselves. And it's important to remember that the Israelis will use misinformation consistently in order to confuse and to disrupt the populace and to throw their perceived enemies off balance. So how exactly that takes shape between now and whatever that full occupation looks like, that full control that they're discussing, is sort of anyone's guess. But from a humanitarian perspective, I think it's important to note that already in the western side of Gaza City, if we were to go there right now, if I were to take you there, then what you would see is a great deal of improvised housing, tents in the middle of streets, on the side of streets, all along the beach in western Gaza City. So already the populace of eastern Gaza City has been displaced. Not to mention the fact that much of the people in Gaza City have just returned some months ago after a massive displacement. We're not talking about a small population. This is upwards of 800,000 to a million people. So the humanitarian consequences of this would be catastrophic, without any question.
And I think you've partly answered my next question, is you've called this a dangerous escalation. What makes this decision especially concerning right now?
The people of Gaza are extremely vulnerable. They've endured a de facto blockade that's been in place since the beginning of March. They've endured a great deal of bombardment. Their constant restriction access problems. Even to get around the Gaza Strip right now is an enormous challenge. And to do so safely is an enormous challenge. On top of that, you have these distribution centers that have been set up, encouraging people to go into dangerous areas in order to secure food for themselves at risk, literally risking their own lives. So infrastructure right now is at an all-time low. Access to food is extremely insecure and at an all-time low. And so now what we're talking about is a massive displacement of people, potentially from the most populous center in the entirety of the Gaza Strip. So that's why we deem it as such.
So the Israeli government has been at pains to say that taking over Gaza essentially would bring peace to Gaza, and that those that are desperately in need will better be placed to receive help. What's your take on that?
My take on that is what I've been saying consistently, and that is, this is not a complicated problem. What will bring peace to Gaza is to restore the dignity and respect of human beings that are living here, and the preponderance of the population who have nothing to do with hostilities, who simply want to get on with their lives. They want to provide for their families. Opening up humanitarian corridors, allowing normal flow of goods into Gaza, stabilizing markets, allowing people to have free access to food, allowing people to live their lives without fear of constant bombardment. That's what's going to bring peace. It's a bit of a misnomer that more conflict and more bellicosity in the world is going to bring peace. That certainly is an Israeli mindset, but it's not one that I subscribe to.
Are people literally starving to death now?
There are parts of the population that simply cannot afford any food, and yes, they are starving. They are withering away in the face of an impossible situation with regards to access to food. So yes, and more than that, if I could just say, this is a chief question that's certainly in the news and people are asking. I'd like to ask a different question. Why does it have to get to that point before anyone takes action in Gaza? Why do the people have to question how they're going to put food on the table? Isn't that horrible enough? And fundamentally, why does the entire population, 2.5 million people of Gaza, being held in contempt for the actions of a minority? Those are questions that I would like answered myself.
There are reports that Hamas is hijacking any food aid that's coming through. What have you seen on the ground?
Hamas doesn't have a presence. Let me be clear on this. There's not an obvious presence of Hamas on the ground. In all my time here, I haven't seen a flag. I haven't seen an individual that identifies themselves as such. So I think that's important to put in perspective. It's not as if they have a strong grip on the populace or on society. This is elements that have gone underground. Is there resistance against Israeli forces? There is, yes, but it's not something that's obvious. The people that are going after these convoys are simply attempting to put their hands on food because they cannot afford what's in the markets, and because there isn't enough nutrition in what's in the markets.
We hear stories as well of Palestinians being asked to move, and when they do move, they move to areas where bombing continues, so that there's nowhere safe.
That's an accurate statement, Peter. Yes, there is nowhere safe in Gaza. As I sit here, I can hear bombardment out in the distance. There were several times in the night when there were bombs close enough to rattle the house. This is very, very common. It's at some point months ago, there was this concept of a humanitarian space that was established on the ground. There really is no such thing now. The Israelis set out their restricted areas. They leave other areas allegedly that we can move in, quote unquote, safely. But there will always be strikes when and where they choose to do so, be them airstrikes or artillery shelling or naval gunfire. It's very constant and steady.
As Oxfam, what's your call to the international community right now?
Allow free access of food into Gaza, open up every gate available, take advantage of the existing roads. Gaza is not a remote place. These airdrops that are happening, it's all an attempt to make Gaza look like a remote corner of the world. It couldn't be further from the truth. It's an extremely accessible Mediterranean plain. Allow food to get in at normal rates. And we're calling for a ceasefire, a lasting, substantive ceasefire. And we're also calling on all nations to take action here. We live in times of darkness, and I'm a firm believer that times of darkness are also an invitation. They're an invitation to be the light in the world, to guide us out of this darkness, to guide us away from this evil. And countries need to start stepping in, need to start stepping up to exert pressure and use all means available against Israel, with Israel, to fix this problem, to establish a ceasefire and open up the borders.
Chris, we're going to have to leave it there.
Specifically for food, let me just be clear there.
Right. Thank you so much indeed for giving us some clarity on the dire situation there. And let's hope that something can be done, and done urgently. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's Chris McIntosh, Oxfam's Humanitarian Response Advisor in Gaza.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu